Hello, my name is Bill Hemphill, and among other things I am a retired Air Force Major, hence Major Bill. In the military we send our new recruits through basic training, or boot camp, to give them some basic understanding and indoctrination before specialty schools. The purpose of this and the other 4 presentations is to give you the basics, not to make you experts. These presentations are designed to give you a glimpse into the world of government contracting and the adversarial nature of this world. Contract administration is a situational discipline, and a great deal of the regulations interpretation is dependent upon a firm's ownership, product or services, market, path to market, and a number of other variables. So what you will get in these 5 chapters, as I call them, is a 35,000-foot view. If you have company-specific questions, please feel free to follow up with me directly. While the 5 presentations were developed in sequence and build upon the prior training, they can be viewed out of sequence if you wish. Here you can see some of my bona fides and a rationale for why you might want to spend your valuable time finishing this presentation. While you are looking over this list, let me give you a mission statement for contract administration that applies to all business types, locations, or sizes. Our function is to mitigate risk for the firm while expanding business, and towards that end we can never stop learning, reading, and thinking about federal procurement. If you wish to find out more about me, please feel free to go to the LinkedIn and look over my profile. Now on to the next slide. Let's start with a basic description of 3 major differences between commercial and government contracting. By the way, whenever you see government capitalized, as it is on this slide, it refers to the federal government. Lowercase g would refer to state, local, county, municipal governments. Government contracting is 1. More highly regulated, 2. Has the contract as the end of negotiations, and 3. Presumes the contractor is totally knowledgeable of all the terms to which they have agreed. Let's examine more closely that last statement. If you receive a solicitation with hidden federal acquisition regulations or FAR clauses included by reference, and submit a proposal without any exceptions whatsoever, the government will presume an award can be made without any further discussion, and that you can be held accountable for all of the terms. Every firm, large or small, needs to have access to a contracts professional, whether on staff, through outside legal counsel, or a consultant, to mitigate the risk of not being able to perform to the government's expectation and subsequently getting penalized. In this chapter, we will focus on the minimum requirements for a compliance program. Historically, in 2006 and 2007, all of the government contractors were abuzz over the prospect of the FAR Council's attempt to codify a compliance program. I personally began a compliance program in 2005 with no government guidance, in the hope that either I was guessing right or the government would grandfather whatever we developed at the corporation, as it would predate the FAR directives. Expectations were high in late 2007 for the FAR clauses to be published, but we had to wait until the following year. The FAC, or Federal Acquisition Circular, that added FAR 52203-13 and its descriptive and prescriptive clauses was published in the Federal Register in December 2008, with the authority to audit published 3 months later. Because we have discussed the self-reporting aspect in the previous chapter, we will limit ourselves to the second part in this chapter. When we did finally get a look at the content, there was a universal letdown, because in the build-up to the release, a number of Washington, D.C. law firms had held seminars, and the NCMA had held several seminars on the topic of government compliance program. In almost every session, the Federal Sentencing Guidelines, Section 8B2, came up. That section has a superb description of a compliance program, and the FAR clauses fell short. Notwithstanding that letdown, let's examine the content of Section 8b(2). This portion of the FSG establishes mitigating factors to offset the sentence in part or total, and represent the second phase of sentence determination after guilt has been established. There are 4 parts to this description, shown here. I will discuss each in detail. The firm's executive management must have ownership of the program, but not to manage it day to day. To keep the executives in the loop, whomever is delegated the authority to manage the compliance program must ensure open lines of communication and periodic status briefings. A planned monthly compliance program status report for scheduled executive staff meetings would be a good way to show the intent of senior staff to stay in touch. The first question any competent external auditor will ask is, do you have published policies and procedures, and if so, can I get a copy of them or see them? Being able to show an auditor the policies and procedures goes a long way in establishing your credibility as a competent contractor. Try to visualize the policies and procedures as a pyramid, with policies at the top and work instructions at its base. And this might give you more of a feel for the structure. Now you might ask, why should the policies and procedures be maintained electronically? The reason is threefold. First, by this method you have met the legal definition of publishing the policies and procedures to your workforce. Second, you have a single point of control and authorship. Third, if an employee happened to print out a copy of the procedure 6 months ago and changes were made in the interim, the printed copy is fair game for auditor review. However, if the process is that the most current, accurate, and complete versions are only available electronically, you won't be held to the content of the printed procedure. This is usually referenced in a footer at the bottom of the procedures pages, even the electronic versions. Now to training. Training is a vital part of any standardized process, but more so for federal compliance due to the onerous penalties that could be applied and the fact that it is a different paradigm to which most employees have been exposed. There are 3 viable methods to deliver training. Face-to-face, the best for retention and answering questions. Live meeting, the best for not having to incur travel expenses and still getting questions answered. Online, best for reaching large geographically dispersed workforce at their convenience. My preference in past years has been the online training standardization because of standardization and workforce convenience. Any formal training that meets an external requirement should have a knowledge test associated with it. This accomplishes 2 things. First, it reinforces the training, and second, it creates a permanent record of personnel participation and the effective dates. As to this latter point, these records should be retained for at least 3 years in accordance with FAR 4.703b(2). Now, how do you verify that the training was retained or used properly? Once you have created the policies and procedures and trained the workforce, you have to ensure the rules are being applied and followed properly. This is done by internally auditing the process. What is discovered during these audits can be used to update and improve the policies and procedures and the training. Likewise, if there are violations, corrective actions can be directed and documented. This is an important aspect because it will demonstrate to an external auditor that your firm can be self-policing and doesn't require constant surveillance by the government. Whether violations are found or not, good record keeping is required in the event that external auditors request visibility. Here are some mistakes that new contractors might make, as discussed in this chapter. The most profound advice to come from this section is that the government expects that you have full understanding of the requirements you are signing up for. Make sure you do know and are not surprised later on. You will find that government contracting is loaded with acronyms, and here are ones that we covered today, either in the slides or narrative. I strongly recommend that you jot these down, as you will have need of them in the future. Because the more knowledgeable you appear to the government, the more credibility you will have, and the less likely that they will force their contract desires on your firm. These acronyms are part of the secret handshake with the government that shows that you are a knowledgeable and competent and well-read contractor. Finally, here is how you can reach me if you have any specific questions or need additional support. Thank you for your attention and have a great day.